probably hard for all of us to do. Is the Lord telling you to move? I don't mean move houses. I don't mean move jobs. But has He laid something on your heart and you're not moving? Keep that thought. Maybe you've heard the story of two guys that went out hiking in the woods. One day when they met up with a hungry bear, the bear started to run towards them. The two guys started running, but then one guy stopped, opened his backpack, and pulled off his hiking boots and started putting on running shoes. His friend yelled, "What are you doing?" Even putting on running shoes? You can't, his friend said, you can't outrun that bear. The other friend said, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. There was a bus driver and a minister were standing in line to get into heaven. The bus driver approached the gate, and St. Peter said, "Welcome. I understand you as a bus driver. Since I'm in charge of housing, I believe that I have found you the perfect place for you. See that mansion over the hilltop? It's yours." The minister heard all this and began to stand a little taller. He said to himself, if a bus driver got a place like that, just think what I'll get. The minister approached the gate, and St. Peter said, "Welcome. I understand you're a minister. See that shack in the valley?" St. Peter had almost barely got the words out of his mouth when the shocked minister said, "I was a minister. I preached the gospel. I helped teach people about God. Why does that bus driver get a mansion and I get a shack?" Sadly, St. Peter responded, "Well, it seems when you preached, people slept. When the bus driver drove, people prayed." I want you guys to watch this video.
The biggest obstacle in your life today could be one of the smallest words in the English language. So many times we blame everyone and everything else for our situation when the problem is this little two-letter word. What is that word? If. I'll give my life to Jesus if. Fill in the blank. How often this word stands in the way of our obedience to God.
I would share Jesus with people at my job if...
I'd start tithing if...
I would enter into the worship today if...
I'd spend more time with my kids
I
if...
would go on that missions trip
I'd start treating my wife better if...
God, I'll really start serving you if...
By adding if, we make excuses. We bargain with God. We set conditions for our obedience or try to shift the responsibility to others. The word if implies that God needs to do more to hold up his end of the bargain. He has already done what we need most. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He didn't die for us based on if. He died for us because. Because he loved us with an unquenchable love. Let's not obey God if. Let's obey him because. Let's love God because. Today, let's enter into worship not based on if, but because. Let's lose the if. Because.
How many of you use if a lot? How many of you use but? If. How many of you have made concessions with the Lord? If you get me out of this place, I will never be there again. Got a few hands. Now, how many of you are in that same situation today because you forgot when he brought you out of it the first time, you just decided to dive back in? No hands. A few smiles. We can't seem to get through our head that he's not somebody we're supposed to make promises with and not to keep them. that word if. We've all said it. How many of you feel like God was leading you somewhere and you didn't move? Maybe it was to talk to somebody in the middle of Walmart and pray with them. Maybe it was when you were listening to the music this morning and you felt that tug on your heart to come down here and pray during music, and you're like, now wait a minute. Maybe it's okay. You'll get it. That if is crazy. If God, if you'll do this, I'll do that. Y'all are looking at me like you're crazy and I don't know where you're going today. But I want to start in Genesis. And we're going to read Genesis 19, 15 through 25, and we're going to talk a little bit this morning about Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, how many of you has heard about Sodom and Gomorrah? Nobody? Do you remember all you know about it? Maybe not all of it. Sodom and Gomorrah was a wicked place. Now, some of you are probably thinking I'm going to talk about the bad things that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a wretched place. They did stuff that I can't even imagine. But Abraham, we looked earlier in the chapters, Abraham was interceding for Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't want God to let them go. He didn't want them to wipe them off the face of the earth. So in chapter 19, these two angels show up. Now, would you know if an angel walked up and looked you in the face? Probably not. My wife's kind of got a neat story about an angel that come into Calvary, and then he left. Not very many people seen him. But would we understand or believe if an angel was right here? It says that evening, the two angels come to the entrance of the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there, and when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Now, just to give you a little hindsight, back in that day when you sat around at the gate, that meant you was somebody. I don't know that I could even give you a for instance, but they were sitting at that gate because they had clout. They thought they was somebody. Then he welcomed them and bowed with his face to the ground. He said, "My lords," he said, "come to my home to wash your feet and be my guest for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way." Doesn't sound like he was wanting to stay very long, did it? Now, as we look at this, there's a lot of stuff going on. And in Sodom and Gomorrah, it was filth. I would probably think of it as maybe Sin City. Everybody's been there. We went one time, and I won't ever fly out of that place again. Thought it was dying. When we started out and the plane started out and it started rocking and rolling and we got above the mountains, it was okay. But that few minutes between ground zero and the top of them mountains, I think a pilot would get a mansion. Because I was praying, Lord, don't make me die in Las Vegas. I didn't want to go there. But Sodom and Gomorrah, that was where he lived, was filth. Oh, no, they replied. We'll just spend the night out here in the city square. But Lot insisted. So at the last, they went home with him. Lot prepared a feast for them, complete with fresh bread made without yeast, and they ate. Before they retired for the night, all of the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted at Lot, "Where are the men that come to spend the night with you?" They wanted them. Just trying to lay a foundation before you can see where they're going. They were knocking on the door wanting Lot to let the two that was in his house out because they wanted to have sex with them. Now, back in that day, when you had guests, those guests were very high on the totem pole. So on down in that scripture, we see that Lot went outside and shut the door and said, "Hey, let me give you my two daughters." Now, I don't know exactly about you, but there's not something that just tickles my ear when he's ready to give them his daughters. Y'all getting a picture? Some of you are looking at me like, you can quit at any time. But it's the truth. This scripture right here explains everything that we're going through today. When women love women and men love men, it's an abomination. As your pastor, I'm required to tell you about the hard stuff. The Bible is offensive in nature. It's our roadmap to heaven, to the cross. So this morning we're going to skip down to verse 15. It says, "At dawn the next morning the angels became insistent." They'd heard all that commotion out there. They knew what them men wanted them to do. And they can't get out fast enough. They're like, "God's going to wipe this place out. You got to go." He was trying to rush them out. "Hurry," they said to Lot. "Take your wife and your two daughters who are here. Go out right now, or you're going to be swept away in the destruction of the city." Now, let's look at this in our point of view today. How many times has God impressed on your heart for you to move and you didn't move? How many times has he impressed on your heart that you need to go one way and you stayed right where you were? Many times. My name's Chris, and I'm your pastor, but I've been there. Sin is fun for a season, the Bible says. Lost my place. Believe that or not. He said, "Run for your lives and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you'll be swept away." And Lot, being the human adult male who thought he had it all figured out, it's like, "I don't want to go to the caves and the mountains." He said, "Oh no, my Lord." Lot begged, "You have been so gracious to me and saved my life. and you have shown such great kindness, but I cannot go to the mountains. How many of you today are sitting where you know you're not supposed to be, but the fun or the money or whatever has you bound in shackles, and you don't know how to let go of it? When God says move, what do? You move. Is it easy? Anybody ever been in a bad relationship besides me? I got a few. Got some double hands. I've been there. You're dating somebody, maybe living with them, and you're thinking, man, this is the funnest thing ever. But you got that nagging, gnawing feeling in your gut that God's saying, you were raised better than that. Your mom and dad taught you better than that. My word says you know better than that. But the sin is fun for a season. But Lord, I can't move out. My girlfriend or significant other is, what would she do? What would that look like? God said, move. You move. Because if you don't, your life is going to be turned upside down. If God says move, you say, yes, sir. Not, but if I had a little bit better clear direction, if you could show me a sign. The bad thing is he's probably showed you 5 of them and slapped you upside the head, and you still are asking for more. You've been there, hadn't you? You may be there now. We'll open up the front later, and you can come up here. Looks like the altar's going to be full today. We got a bunch of people in trouble. God was trying to get a hold of me one time, and I thought it would be better that I made money on Sunday, so I took my dozer and semi, and I went out and was just going to do a cash job. Anybody ever had one of them? The government don't know. That's cash money. Got out there. Started unloading this dozer, and for some unknown reason, it falls on its side, and a fence post come right through the cab with me. Making money. God's saying move, and I'm saying whoa. You've been there. But if you stay where you are, even if you can afford it, even if it feels right, even if it's something that you've done all your life, it's fixing to go bad. Because when God says step through the door, you got to say, yes, sir. And sometimes some of you have forgotten that Jesus knows best. You know that show, Fathers Knows Best? He knows. You're his child. How many like to watch their kids make mistakes and learn from them? Don't touch that hot stove, Junior. He walks away from it. 2 minutes later, he's back in there. Come on, buddy, you can't touch that. It's hot. And he comes in one more time. And he touches that stove. And he screams bloody murder. And you had to watch him do it. And it hurts you deep in your heart. God was looking down on Sodom. God wanted the best. He wanted to protect. But he couldn't find any very many good people. God's saying move. And he's saying, wait a minute, I got a better idea. What's God telling you today to move on? Maybe something close to you. I had somebody yesterday come up to me and said, you know what? He said, God's good. And I said, all the time. He said, we started paying tithe and getting all this stuff. Ain't got no raises, but this stuff's just adding God's blessing. That's what he does. God's looking up there today saying, move over here. And you're saying, but God, if you could just show me one more thing. Them ifs get you in trouble. I don't know if you guys have ever dug with a backhoe, but when you're digging a ditch and you know you're close to fiber optic cable, you take it real slow. My first experience with that was in Liberty, Indiana. Brand new. I bought me a farm, and then I bought a backhoe. Because nobody had hired me. I didn't have no experience. And I thought, I'll show them. I'll just go buy one and go into business. So I'm over in Liberty on 101, digging out by the road, and everything's been marked. There's nothing there but a little bitty phone line going to a house. That last bucket full of dirt, this 500 pair line looked like a couple of roses. It went, pfft. I thought, uh-oh. You ever said, uh-oh? I just turned the backhoe off and left the keys right on it. And I told the guy working for me, I said, we might as well go home because it's over. My insurance won't even touch that. It's like $100,000 a second because it had all these people on it and stuff. It went to banks and casinos and wherever it routed around. I don't have that kind of insurance. I had $1 million, but we're talking just a few seconds. That's going to be gone. I'm like, take that backhoe and don't even acknowledge I was even on it. I'll give it to you. I'll still make the payments. You take that. I got a call an hour later. My stomach is in knots. The guy I'm working for says, uh-oh. Just remember to tell him you were digging. It was a dead line. Made me breathe better. God's telling you guys, wait a minute. You better get out of there before the getting's bad. Y'all are still saying, well, if God really wanted me out of this situation, he would show me. Maybe he is. If God really didn't want us to do something, he would show me. Maybe he's laid something in front of you. And you're saying, no, that's not what I had envisioned in my mind. What God wanted. He said, but I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster would catch up to me there, and I would soon die. Now he's talking to the Lord, and got these angels around there, and he almost needed something put on his back that said, here's your sign. See, there's a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life could be saved. I'm thinking he liked all that fine living. Kind of like society is today. If it feels good, do it. God wouldn't put something on this earth he didn't want us to touch. Let's back up a little bit. What happened in the garden? God lets you do a lot of things, but there's a few things that you can't do. And we're not smart enough to see it. All right, the angel said, I'll grant you your request. I will not destroy the little village, but hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing until you arrive there. Now that explains why the village was named or known as Zoar, which means little place. He didn't want to get too far away because he might want to go in and visit, later after he can get those two angels to go. Lot reached the village just as the sun was rising over the horizon. Then the Lord. When you say then the Lord, something ugly might be fixing to happen. Uh-oh. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them along with the other cities and villages of that plain, wiping out all, y'all know what all means, people and every bit of vegetation. God didn't play with them when they were sinning. Is he playing with us today? I hear so many times, well, God's a loving God. He wouldn't let something happen like that. They got a song out. I think it's a country one called Choices. Maybe an old one, but I could sing it for you if you wanted me to, but I won't. Easy. I'm going to vacate the whole premises. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. How many times has God brought you through the fire and you've turned around and went, well, I wish I could have just that little piece of my life that wasn't that bad. I sure did have a lot of fun back there when we were doing that. And you look back, and before you know it, you're right back in it. You can't play with fire and not get burned. You can't play with diesel fuel without smelling like it. There's a reason that God put these scriptures in this Bible for us to live by. Abraham got up that morning and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain towards Sodom and Gomorrah and watched as columns of smoke rose from the cities like smoke from a furnace. Was God serious? But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. How many of you have told God, if you'll just give me another chance? Or he's placed a roadmap in front of you, and you say, give me just a minute. Maybe there's some of you there today. When God says move, you can't hesitate. I remember when we come from the basement to this building here. What a step. You ever get sick to your stomach when you're fixing to buy a new vehicle? Or you get it that first month and your payment comes in and your hot water heater had just went out and you're going, oh my. Or you buy a truck and you don't pray about it first. There's a reason that peanut gallery in the corner back there's laughing. But it ain't funny. It's terrible. If you can't see, my wife's grinning ear to ear going, yep, that's right. Me and the Lord told you. Don't tell any women at Crosspointe in confidence something that the pastor's done, because it's going to end up right in the pastor's wife's lap. And that ain't pretty. I'm still paying for that. When God tells you to run for your life, you'd better move when you are told to move. The angels were just there to warn him. And he couldn't figure it out. But Lot hesitated, so they grabbed him by the hand and led him out of the city. How many of you today, God's got his hand there saying, come on, I want to pull you out of this. And you're saying, but it won't work. I've put it on pencil and paper and it won't work. I can't live by myself. I can't move to that job. I can't quit what I'm doing. God's got his hand out saying, come on. Come on. I got you. That's why when you pray and you worship the Lord and you see people raise both their hands to the Lord, it's like a baby wanting his daddy. It's like a little girl wanting her father. Jesus is there. He's right there saying, I can help you through this trial if you would just let me. But if we find ourselves in places bound by destruction, and God's saying move, and you're saying, but if you're hesitating this morning, maybe he's laid on your heart something to do here. Maybe he's laid on your heart on Sunday mornings to get up out of bed and come to church. This morning I didn't feel good. My Crohn's was bothering me. But I knew I had to come to church. Because what would y'all have done? I'd have had to stick Josh Lackey or somebody up there. Uh-oh. They're all for it now. You think the jail's hard to tell stories at? These people here, man, I do love you. Let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a time in your life when God has grabbed you by the hand and dragging you out of a bad situation, and you're still hesitating? Lord, I need to pick up one more thing before we leave. God's saying, come on. But sometimes in your life, you keep on telling him you need one more thing. He'll turn his back. It says that he'll harden your heart. There's somebody looking at me today. I don't know who you are. But God's been telling you need to get right with him. There's things in your life that you know aren't right, and you wouldn't tell anybody for any amount of money. But you're feeling that uneasy feeling this morning. You might be saying, God, I'm not strong enough. I don't know how people make it without Jesus in life anyway. Because without God, nothing is possible. But with him, all things are possible. Even the stuff that you don't think could even ever happen. God's got your back if you'll just accept it. He's not going to force you to do nothing. He's at that door knocking. And you know who you are today. Because I don't. I get to talk about everything God wants me to and read Bible stories and make you laugh. But God's dealing with somebody today. God's dealing with you. You know why I know that? Because he deals with me daily too. There's an old story of a traveling salesman that went around selling a magic potion that would turn water into gold. Wouldn't that be nifty? There was just one catch. While you followed the detailed instructions, you could not think about red monkeys or the potion would not work. Do you think anybody else was able to do that? I mean, in my mind, a red monkey has just popped to the front of my head, and I can't think of nothing else. Maybe that's that ADD or AD, I don't know what, something. Some kind of attention problem. The more you say to yourself, don't think about the red monkeys, the more you think about the red monkeys. If God's telling you to quit something in your life, you have to turn and go make your mind do something else. When God took alcohol away from me, I had to go start drinking coffee. Now he needs to do something about the coffee. I don't know if that's biblical or not. Lay down the drink more coffee. You got to. You got to turn away from what you're tempted by. Because you know why? We're weak, but he is strong. We couldn't do church. We couldn't do life without him. Maybe there's someone here today that can't get rid of something in your life. But you sit at home and think about it until it makes you go get a red monkey. You guys know who you are. You want that feel good. God's saying turn away. You can't sit at the house on Monday night when you got a problem, when there's guys here in the back of this church wanting to help you. You're at home thinking about red monkeys. On Wednesday night, you're at home because you're wore smooth out. You're wanting to get away from something, but you're sitting there thinking about red monkeys. Y'all going to leave today, and all you're going to think about is red monkeys. What did the preacher preach about? Red monkeys. What did he mean? I don't know. I'm still thinking about red monkeys. What did he say? I can't tell you because I'm thinking about monkeys. God's pulling you today somewhere. I don't know why God's left this earth the way it has, because it's rotten. I don't know why God saved me, because I was rotten. Does that mean that I'm perfect every day? Nope. It means I got some of that grace. When you trip and fall, or you fall back into where you come from, he's there to pick you up. But you have to move. You have to let go. Second thing, you said that too loud, Danny. Now I'm thinking about that. The second thing you got to do is don't argue. How many of you, if I told you to go do something and you didn't want to do it, you'd argue, right? When your wife says, go take the trash out, and you're watching your favorite show on TV, you argue. When you find something in the Bible that says, don't do this, you argue with the Lord. I promise, Lord, as soon as you give me just a little more money, I'm going to give like you told me to. I've been there. done that. Bought the t-shirt. Are you getting a picture? When you hesitate, God's got it already figured out here. If you'll just climb over that wall, He's ready